The Story of Civilization, Part 2, The Life of Greece, being a history of Greek civilization from the beginnings and of civilization in the Near East, from the death of Alexander to the Roman conquest, with an introduction on the prehistoric culture of Crete by Durant. Chapter 27, The Art of the Dispersion, Section 2, Painting. Painting is usually the last great art to mature in a civilization. In the early stages of a culture, it is subordinated to religious architecture and statuary, and it acquires independence only when private life and private wealth invite the decoration of the home or the commemoration of a name. Some people would say that the art leads to what people call organized religion. The death of democracy having weakened the sense of the state, the individual returned to the domestic consolations. Rich men built themselves palatial residences and gave high fees to artists who could adorn a fountain or brighten a wall. Alexandria used painting on glass as one form of mural ornament. All Hellenistic cities employed for this purpose movable panels of wood. Princes and magnates preferred to have immense pictures painted on detachable marble slabs. Pausanias describes a prodigious number of paintings seen by him in his tour of Greece, but nothing of this flourishing art has cheated time except some faded tints on pottery or stone. We are left to guess at its quality from the pale and middling copies found at Pompeii, Herculaneum, and Rome. Greece continued to rank its painters as high as its sculptors and architects, perhaps higher. It paid them American commissions and told 1,000 fond stories about their lives. What do they mean by American commissions? Ctesichles of Ephesus, failing to receive a desired boon from Queen Stratonice, painted her romping with a fisherman, exhibited the picture, and then took ship to safety. Stratonice, because the likenesses of the two figures were so admirably expressed, forgave him and let him return. Often that sort of thing is a trick. Oh, I forgive you, and no, I don't. When Aratus took Sicyon, he ordered all portraits of its past dictators destroyed. One dictator, Archestratus, had been shown by Melanthus, a 4th century painter, beside his chariot, and so vividly that the artist Neocles entreated Aratus to spare the picture. Aratus consented on condition that the figure of Archestratus be replaced by some less offensive form. Protagoras, says Strabo, painted a satire with the partridge so realistically that live partridges called to it. The painter finally blotted out the bird so that people might appreciate the excellence of his satire. The same artist, plainly tells us, applied 4 coats of paint to his most famous picture. Ialaucus, supposed founder of the town of that name and roads, so that when time wore out the uppermost layer, the colors might still be fresh and clear, vexed by his inability to represent with sufficient verisimilitude the foam that dripped from the mouth of Ialaucus, his dog. Protagoras lost his temper and hurled a sponge at the picture, willing to destroy it. The sponge, of course, struck just at the right place, and when it fell, left a blotch of color marvelously like the foam of a panting hound. When Demetrius Polyarchetus besieged Rhodes, he refrained from setting fire to the town, lest this painting be destroyed. During the siege, Perdiccas continued at work in his village studio, in the direct line of the Macedonian advance. Demetrius sent for him and asked why he had not, like the other villagers, taken refuge within the city walls. "Because I know," answered Perdiccas, "that you are waging war with Rhodians, not with the arts." The king assigned a guard to protect him and neglected the siege to watch the artist work. Hellenistic painters knew the tricks of perspective, foreshortening, lighting, and grouping, though they used landscapes only as a background and decoration and rendered them, if we may judge from the Pompeian copies, in a lifeless and conventional way. They at least realized the existence of nature and brought it into art at the same time that Theocritus was importing it into pottery. But they were so interested in man and all his works that they had little time for trees and flowers. Their predecessors had painted only what they considered to be gods and the rich. The Hellenistic artists were fascinated by anything human and discovered that an ugly subject might make a beautiful painting, or at least a handsome feat. They turned to common life with a Dutch zest and delighted in picturing barbers, cobblers, prostitutes, seamstresses, donkeys, deformed men, or peculiar animals. To these genre pictures, they added representations of still life, cakes and eggs, fruit and vegetables, fish and game, wine and all the paraphernalia of its ancient ritual. Sossus of Pergamum amused his contemporaries by imitating in deceptively realistic floor mosaic an unswept floor still littered with the leavings of a feast. The sedate were scandalized and denounced these glorifiers of common things as pornographoi and reparographoi, betrayers of obscenity and filth. Well, by obscenity, porn is sex outside of marriage in whatever type, right? In Thebes, the representation of ugly objects was forbidden by law. Certain larger masterpieces of the age were rescued not from anonymity, but from oblivion by the lava of Vesuvius. A fresco found at Ostia is apparently a weak copy of a Hellenistic original. We know it as the Aldobrandini wedding, from the Italian family to which it belonged before it found a place in the Vatican. Aphrodita Rubensianly robust, warms up the courage of the timid bride, while the bridegroom, needing no prodding, waits impatiently beside the couch. Finer than these central personages is a graceful woman playing some hymeneal strain on a faded lute. A Pompeian mural, traced uncertainly to a 3rd century Greek original, shows Achilles, with Patroclus beside him, angrily surrendering, precise to Agamemnon's lust. The figures in these paintings seem to our want and taste more ample than beautiful. We are accustomed to less body and longer legs, but it must be conceded that ancient artists knew Greek men and women better than we shall ever know them. Time has taken the bloom from these works. Only an active historical imagination can restore the brilliance and freshness that doubtless were once the admiration of multitudes and kings. More impressively are certain Roman mosaics that have apparently been derived from Hellenistic paintings. Mosaic was an old art in Egypt and Mesopotamia. The Greeks took it over and lifted it to the peak of its history. A painting was divided by lines into little squares and tiny cubes of marble, were so colored that when put together, they reproduced the picture in a form surprisingly durable. Several mosaics, though trodden by innumerable feet through the many centuries, still retain their color and tell their ancient tale. The Battle of Issus, found in the house of the Faun at Pompeii, and dubiously connected with a 4th century Greek painting by Philoxenus, or is it Philoxenus? This mosaic and the Achilles and Briseis are in the Naples Museum. It is composed of approximately 1.5 million stones, each some 2 or 3 millimeters square, a whole mosaic measuring 8 by 16 feet. It was badly injured by the earthquake and eruption that overwhelmed Pompeii in 79, the Common Era, but enough remains to attest the skill and vigor of the work. Alexander, black and disheveled, with the heat and filth of war, is leading the attack and has ridden his Epiphalis to within a few feet of the chariot that carries Darius. A Persian grandee has flung himself between the kings and has received Alexander's lance in his body. Darius, ignoring his own danger, for the conqueror's next lance is aimed at him, leans from his chariot towards his fallen friend, his face full of anxiety and grief. Persian cavalrymen rush up to rescue the ruler, and Alexander's weapon stays poised in the air. The representation of complex emotions in Darius's face is the outstanding accomplishment of the work. But the most attractive head in this composition is that of Alexander's horse. There is no greater mosaic than this. And if you have a different opinion, comment.